All right, good morning everyone. How's everyone doing? Paul Trani here. Hello. Awesome. Adobe Live. Keita Jones. You should see the chat messages now. So welcome everyone. Should be able to see me. Paul Trani, going to dive into creating high fidelity prototypes, kind of for more of a holistic approach, potentially using some similar examples as what Howard just did, just so you know. So good to have you, Cody Bear, in the house. I'm going to do a little cheers to you. I just need some coffee, basically. So we're going to dive into this. This is all about getting started in Adobe XD. So every week we do a getting started, and basically we cover what we're going to talk about for the week. And essentially what we're doing this week, just so you know, is all about UX and UI. So we have Jennifer Alt joining us tomorrow, just FYI. This is all UX and UI week. Jennifer Alt joining us, and with Melody Saburi. So basically all female lineup. Jill Rosenberg as well. Danielle Morimoto, she hasn't been in for a bit, so it's going to be super cool to see her. And Ainsley Wagoner, she actually works for Adobe, works on some awesome projects, and also she's a great musician. So it's going to be really fun, an awesome week, all female lineup, and it's going to be super cool. So thank you, Nathaniel, for joining me. Doris, Jason, Claire, Nicholas. Awesome. It's good to be home, right? Hopefully everybody's Monday's good. I'm going to dive right into that. So this is the schedule. This is Tuesday through Thursday. So same time right now, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Join us, and that is the deal. And now you know. So let me get some things adjusted here. Should be good. And we're going to dive into creating prototypes, of course. And creating a high fidelity design. So let me go ahead and switch my screen. I'm going to scare you actually first off what we have here as I switch over. And just to recap, we do this every Monday, depending on the streams for the week. We will do a getting started, okay? And really, it's all about creating high-fidelity prototypes today. You can see this, all these screens. These are wireframes or low-fidelity, whatever you want to call them, low-fidelity, wireframes, whatever. This might be a good place to start if you just want to design. You have wireframes if you go to Get UI Kits, and then you go to wireframes. That might be a good place to start. Okay, so if you just need some files and want to play around, I encourage people to do that. And they're really cool. So typically they are things that you might need. You might need some sign-up screens, and you seriously just don't want to develop each one by one, but I can go ahead and take, say, these assets and start working with them and designing with them. Okay, so awesome, Howard, and thank you so much for Howard for covering the daily creative challenge. In fact, I'm going to switch gears, so rather than just using this sort of general file, you can actually dive into the what we have here, the daily creative challenge. So that's what Howard just covered. He is on, let's see, day, 5. Designing high fidelity screens. And again, that's what I'm doing right now, but at a higher level, just so you know. You can get those templates, which is another thing you can do. Just go get the template, and you will have basically what is also open in here somewhere. But basically I just downloaded it, and we can open up that. Wait for it. So again, this is just the file that you might get from here. But essentially what they're making is a music player, which is also super fun to work with because it's like, who doesn't love music, and designing toward it. So this is my low fidelity or wireframe that I have currently going on, but really start from whatever you want, whether it's either a file from the Daily Creative Challenge or if it's going to get UI kits and wireframes. So I'm just giving you some assets, and really the hard work's done. We kind of figured out what these screens, what the content of the screens are, and we get to turn these into some high fidelity prototypes. But it gets tricky because you want to make sure you're efficient with it as well. So fantastic. Love the music. All right. Music's good. That's good to hear. Along those lines, let's dive into this. Let's make a fun music player. Again, this is all about creating high fidelity screens, okay? And first off, what we can do is we can just start with what we can do in XD. Okay, first off, even if I start with this simple splash screen, of course, I can change the color to anything that I want, right? I probably want to go beyond that, right? Then beyond a simple color. Even for this splash screen, the splash screen is actually going to need a logo, okay? I'm kind of picking colors at random, right? Maybe I do have a couple colors selected. Well, what you're going to want to do, and what I want to cover a lot on, are these creating assets, okay? And still, get involved with the Daily Creative Challenge. I guarantee you, Howard's going to talk about it this week. But as you start to develop screens, you're going to want that content over here in the Assets panel. I'm not doing it right now because I haven't decided on the colors that I want. Okay, what do we need first? That's a weird artifact right there. There we go, something. But what I really need first is a logo. Okay, so I use Illustrator a lot. I'm going to jump over to Illustrator. These are kind of some of the ideas I was using for the app, and typically this would come from the branding of the particular, whoever's doing the branding. So here's my icon for this app. I'm going to call it Music, okay? So I've done something similar to this before, but I'm going to go with this title, Music, M-U-S-I-K. I can always change that later. And this is the logo I kind of came up with. I thought this was kind of cool, right? And I thought this was a pretty sweet font as well. So let's just check that out. This is in Illustrator. I'm going to go to the Properties panel. Oh, yes, that's right. You ever have those days you're like, I would never use, I never thought I'd use Arial Rounded. But it just goes to show there are no bad fonts. There's just fonts being used inappropriately. Okay? That's it. There's just fonts that are being used inappropriately. Okay, I did find Marker Felt font out in the wild yesterday. Marker Felt is a kind of a bad font, I thought, but it was very in context of what I was looking at, which was at a bar called, I don't know what it was like Nathan's Tavern, and it kind of worked for the word tavern because it was just a dive bar. Yeah, put that in Marker Felt, why not, okay? But I'm already kind of establishing a look here, right? I have this text right here, which looks good. Turn that into the logo. So this will be like my title text. And then I have my logo right here. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, right? Super simple, copy, and then we'll jump into XD, and then I'll just do a paste, right? Pasting it right in here. The reason I did that is I want to make sure I have access to all these different Bezier points. When I copy and paste assets right over here, look, I can change the fill to whatever I want. And not only that, I have access to the individual Bezier elements, right? So I like doing that copy and paste. It's no longer linked to Illustrator, but once it's in XD, I just like to continue down that XD road, right? So this is perfect for me, for what I want. That's actually a pretty good size. I can make it sure it's nice and, you know, maybe it's perfectly centered. I typically shift things up because I think when it comes to designing screens, when you put things in the very center, they're really boring. It's nice because it's organized, but it's really boring. So I would actually do, I would raise this up a little bit and I would get that whole golden ratio going, right? Just higher up right here. That's where people have a tendency more to look anyways, as opposed to the center, right? So this makes it more interesting. That's where that's gonna go, super simple, and we continue on our way. Rather than using a boring color back there, I'm gonna make it a little better. In fact, I'm gonna jump out to say for instance, stock. Okay, so you can grab images from anywhere. I just did a quick search for music. There's some cool images right in here. I kind of like this one. That might work. What else do we have? Look at these epic. Look at this. Lasers. Let's get some lasers going in there. I can save a preview to music, right? And that's what I'm going to do a couple of these. This one right here. I'm going to save a preview to this library, right? So that's all I'm doing. Bam. And that's what I'll do all day long. Click, just saving a preview. What is music? Well, if we take a look, say for instance, in Photoshop this time, again, we're talking about designing high fidelity assets and everything and screens. This is the library that I made. It's called Music, right? And all I did is create a new library in your libraries panel. Whether I'm in Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign, you can make your own library. And this is where I want to pull from. All right, tell me a story, somebody. How are we doing? Larry Dominic. Good morning, sir. Hopefully everybody's having a fantastic day. I'm really excited about this week. you know, I just love designing. I don't even care what it is. I will like design and judge everything. Marcel, good to have you here. So here's what I have. And by the way, I already started kind of mocking up something, but essentially you could see right here, this is where I synced that file right here. This is that Adobe stock file, and I can kind of drop it in here and kind of see what it looks like. And I might place it just like this, just to kind of get it going on. There's a couple different ways I could do this, right? I could start to mock this up, and I'll kind of make a screen in Photoshop typically, you know, because probably there's other little tweaking I like to do, but I'm kind of building out my splash screen, and I can do that in Photoshop. And guess what? I can do that in XD, because just like I said, for that library, open CC libraries, waiting, there it is. And sure enough, I can grab any image. And typically what I like to do, Andy, good morning, Andy. We talked last week, fantastic. Last week was all about Photoshop, so it was like super fun. Amazing designers. So what I can do from there is I could drop that photo right in here, okay? Notice how it's linked, okay? There it is, okay? Even as I start to make, you know, a screen, for instance, like this, with maybe a little bit of a gradient, you know, I can do this a number of ways. This is so interesting. But I can take all these layers and I can drop it into that CC library. And right now it's syncing up. This is what happens when you're syncing CC assets, library assets. It's getting the whole entire graphic. That's why it's larger. But this could be my, you know, home page graphic right there. So that's what I'm calling it, home page. Or actually, sorry, let's just do background. That's what we'll call it. But again, it will get synced in here with all those layers. Yes, Andy joined me last week. Anel was there. Chipotle for lunch. Sure, why not? Right? And just be aware of, since we're designing high fidelity screens, just be aware of the content. You always want to be appropriate. This is one thing I would not do. I was doing this earlier. I was showing you just how to pick colors. I would never pick colors at random, right? Don't do that. The colors should be chosen for a purpose, right? Don't use it to decorate a page or a screen, okay? So even as I sort of drop this in, I could maybe pull colors from this particular asset. But let's go back in here, open CC libraries. It should be synced now. I could use this one right here. In fact, let's make sure this is good to go. I'm just going to, let's just do this. Let's do a hue saturation. I'm just going to try something out. I'm going to crank that up. Let's colorize it. I'm just making a change. This is going to be fascinating. I want to see how this looks. I'll just save this as background, just as a backup. Oh, this is... So again, what I want to do is I want to double click on this particular file right here. So this is the splash screen or the background that's being used. I can throw that same color cast on top of it. But the key thing is I'm making a change, right? I'm making a change to that asset, right? It went from blue to red, okay? This is the way to build out these assets and make them the most flexible possible. It's syncing right now, so it's gonna change colors, okay? Once it changes colors, this is great because I can have other designers work on this file, right? I can collaborate right here, right? I can say, hey, you know what? Hey, buddy, we had a Photoshop week last week. You're so good at Photoshop. How about if you make me an awesome background? Okay, and then they could go to town, and it's cool that all of your screens will update automatically because you're using CC libraries, okay? So they would make that change to red. Sure enough, it's changed to red just like that. And again, let's get this nice and large. Kind of need to fix the bottom there, not to worry. What do? We drag this down. Notice how we have right here, this little icon says that it's linked, okay? Kushik, well, some hi and wow. Those are two great words I like to hear in the morning. Hi and wow, right? And it's super cool what you can do, right? So we have two cases, right? Even this bar right here, like I kind of didn't fill that in all the way. Again, I'll just make that quick change back in Photoshop with this asset. Notice how the background needs to be black. I made it black. Let's move this over just so we know which ones we're focusing on. There, that's black. Or I'll just add a gradient. Boom. Wait for it. There's 1,000 things, 1,000 different ways I could do this. So many ways. But now I'm getting into the designing of these screens to something that's appropriate. Red, I like red. Red's exciting. I also like the dynamic colors of what we had before. Like, this is fun. The number of colors that we have in here that we're going to pull from in a second to make our different screens. Okay, let's bring that up like that. Let's get rid of that. This might be my final one. So this is my hero image, if you will, my splash screen image, my background. Okay, and this is where all my colors are going to come from. Okay. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to capture the excitement of a concert that's going to go and be injected into our music app. The key thing is it's not about the app. When it comes to these colors, it's not going to be about the app. It's going to be about the content. So really all the colors, everything should meet to kind of match the content. And I'll show you exactly what I mean here in a second. Okay, so that's going to update. It's going to update this screen. We're going to be good to go. I can copy. Move that over. Actually, here's what I do for this second screen. Boom, it's updated. It looks brilliant, right? This is more along the lines of what I want. Right in here, selecting this asset, copying it. So Command C, selecting the splash screen. Command V, pasting it, right? Bringing that below everything else like that. Same thing for this. You know, this is the tricky part. You ready for this? Are you ready, Doris and David? So David, just tuning in, by the way, we had a fantastic Photoshop streams last week, like some of the best Photoshop gurus and that I didn't know about previous to last week. So thank you so much for answering Adobe Live. I was also going to point out, just kind of checking out the replays because there's so much good content. And if you miss it, I'm just like, dude, it was so good. Okay, here we go. So what we have going on right now is we have this nice background. It's linked. It's going to be fine as I use it for all these screens, copying it, pasting it over here, you know, sending it to the back. This is what I want. You could use shortcuts. I get it. I usually do a lot of screen moves just because I have a lot of people watching today. And if I start using shortcuts, it's hard to see. So I'm starting to fill this out. This looks pretty good. The logo. Let's have this logo do some magic too. It could be like right there, positioning it kind of within the photo there. But at this point, I want to get into the assets panel and turning this into, guess what, a symbol. Okay, and I'm sure Howard's going to talk about this sometime this week because this is really powerful, because as you start turning these wireframes or low fidelity prototypes into high fidelity prototypes, anytime you find yourself copying and pasting, think, should this be a symbol in my assets panel, right? Or should it be a character style? Or should I capture the colors, right? Symbols, that's what we're going to do now. Boom, there we go. Logo, just like that. If yours doesn't look like this, you can also just view by this grid or list view. You got it, right? So that's what I want to do. I want to kind of drop that out, and I want to actually scoot it up because I would want to create a cool transition. It's going to go from here to here. In fact, there's so many things we can do. I'm so excited. I got to calm down. What are we going to do? So many things that I want to move around, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is the splash screen. It's automatically going to advance to this screen right here where they can log in or sign up, okay? If they click login, it'll go to this screen and everything's starting to look good. In fact, even these kind of like default buttons that I have are looking really sharp. I'm digging them. I'm just gonna ungroup them, and with these two parts selected, right? I can select both of these parts, this text and this shape, and I always try to drag it over. Hit this plus button again. That's now what's going to be called my, generic button. I'll just do what I can right there. Boom. What about this one? Selecting both these assets, adding that. That's another generic button 2. Sorry, I'm a loud typer. I apologize. All right, so that's what I'd want. I have these 2 buttons. This is fantastic, right? Even as I start to work with these assets, notice how they are symbols because they're green. Let me try to zoom in on that. You can see that it's highlighted green. It says, hey, you know what? I'm a symbol in the library. So if you try to use me later on, right, selecting this button and selecting this button. Let me delete this one here. Bear with me. Going to the second screen, pasting it, right? It's still linked, but the cool thing is I can change this to the word login, right? So notice that the content is going to be different, but the style is going to be linked. So notice as I move this around, whether I want it to be left or right or center justified, it's going to reflect that across all of the buttons, but the content itself is going to be different. So I could have this one say sign up, I can have this one say log in, I can, just a case in point, I can come in here and adjust, and it's really hard to see, but I can adjust the corners as well, and you'll see anything I change about it will change across everywhere where it's being used, right? So this is key when you're creating multiple screens and building high fidelity screens for design. Yeah, exactly, Jason Tracy. I love zooming in like that. Okay, so this is what I do. Boom, boom. There we are. Splash screen. Transition to this one. Login screen. In these cases, you can see that these screens did need some punch, right? They needed some life. And thank you so much, Chris Cannon in the house. Cheers, my friend. I'm gonna toast you. And that's what you want to do, is you want to bring life to screens where they need it. But now as we start to get in screens with a lot of detail, you got to really just highlight on the content. And so now let's focus on the content here. Okay. So right over here, I need to start filling this out. This is just a repeat grid. I can kind of undo that just so you can see what's happening here. Everybody should know about repeat grids. If not, the one person that's just learning is going to be blown away. Selecting this element right up here, selecting repeat grid, boom, and it's going to repeat, horizontally, vertically, rows and columns, just like that. I want to add assets to it. I happen to have some on my desktop. That's what I will do. Come out here, grab some images, right? These are just kind of random albums that I kind of picked up, not even that big of a deal, right? But those are my images that I'm going to grab and drop them right in here, and they'll propagate accordingly. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing up here. Same concept, right? Again, making these high fidelity prototypes. Maybe mixing up some of the images if I want to, and I think I will. Let's go with this one. Like that. So there we have it. It's starting to look a little busy in general, and I need to talk about fonts as well and just basically character styles. It's looking a little busy. So here's a case where I might say, hey, you know what? This background served its purpose a little bit ago, right? It was fantastic, but now maybe it's getting just a little too busy. And I would encourage you to maybe select that asset and go right down here and turn on background blur. Okay, you ready for this? Dawood? Yeah! Hey gang, joining the competition today. Welcome, buddy. That's what I want to hear. And instead of background blur, you want to change this to object blur. Okay, so from there, object blur, that blurs out the background. Now what happens here is that you'll start to see on the edges, it's going to bleed in and start to reveal a little bit of that background color. So in that case, just be aware of that and then change your background color appropriately. So this is what I would do here, because again, my goal is to focus on the content. Content first, right? We get it. And again, this is just looking a lot better. I'm not even crazy about these album colors, but that's the thing. You need to be able to vary these as much as possible and make sure the screen looks good regardless of the album covers or artists, whatever the case may be. Okay, so far so good. That looks good. Let's talk about fonts now, okay? Done some images. There's so much more I need to do, by the way. So much more I need to do. So much more. Colors, all sorts of things. But guess what? This text right here, what did I do? The text for this music is known as Arial Rounded, MT Bold. So that's what I want to use. I never thought I'd use Arial Rounded. Please don't hate me if you don't like it. I don't know what to say. Thank you! Andy, you didn't know this is a dropdown. Again, huge thing. And it's so subtle. Like, again, that's the thing. Some of these little dropdowns, I'll point out a couple of them. This is why I'm glad you're watching. Like, this is worth your price of admission. Right here, these dropdowns, just a little arrow. Same thing right over here for the fill, clicking right in here. Maybe not for that element, but for this background up here, for the fill. Right? You can change this. This is another sneaky little arrow that kind of pops out, and that's how you get to linear gradient or radial gradient, okay? So just keep in mind of that. Going over to browse, I can change this color to white, and now I've established the sort of H1, if you will. Okay, so for that H1, I'll go over here to assets, and what do? Character styles, click, and thank you so much for, I never name files, the names of character styles or elements exactly like I name them, not what they look like, but what they are, because chances are I'm going to change what it looks like. So I wouldn't name it this. Its goal is to be the H1, right, if you will. That's my goal right there. Okay, same thing with these. I didn't call this, I could have called this white button, black button, but I know I'm probably going to change, knowing me, I'm going to change that. Okay, so there we go. Fantastic. Exactly, Andy says, use background blur loads, but never noticed it had object blur. Exactly. I think we snuck that in there, and that's why I want you to be aware of just obviously the releases that we have. So here's the latest features. This is literally like, was it like 2 weeks ago? You know, all these little sneaky little releases that we have. You know, even the eyedropper shortcut is one that just appeared. You wouldn't know about it unless you're like maybe tuning into this new features or watching Adobe Live, quite frankly. But this is huge. This is a big request as well. And it's perfect for what we're trying to do as we go in here and we want, you know, this bar, this element to match that pink. I hit I. So that's all I did. Control key, I. Not control key, but a key in general. And I can go ahead and pick that color. We see that it's tied in with the others, but you get the idea. All right, we're shaping it up. We're designing these prototypes. We're focusing on the content right down here. These icons actually look pretty darn good. But this is a case where I kind of need to step back, and I wish this wasn't designed out as much as it was. So I'm going to ungroup it. I typically like to work in layers, because with layers, I like to lock things down. Like, I just like having this layers panel over here, right? And this really helps me focus on what's selected, because sometimes I don't know, right? Seriously, like you think something's selected, especially if you're dealing with black and white and things like that. I'll take this and I'll lock it down like that. And now I can focus on this group, right? And stuff like that, so. Yes, oh, John mentions last time you used XD, there was no auto animate or fixed position, all that stuff. Yes, fantastic. Yeah, it's awesome how fast this is growing. So right in here, there's a couple different ways we can do this when it comes to these assets. And this already looks pretty good. We could talk about where to get these. There's 1,000 different places. Let's see if I have noun. In terms of resources, feel free to shout out what resource you like. But there's noun project. So this is something I might use. I'm like, okay, do I really need to create a home button? I can, because it's super simple, right? Or do I come in here to something like noun project and type in home just to see what I get for options, right? And then this is just like a place to start. I'm actually really liking this. Again, the simpler the better, almost universal, but maybe that's a jumping off point, right? And I can copy that, come in here, paste it in, and that's the noun project for you. And I can decide if I want to go with that style or this style. Same thing for, let's go music. See what we get. Again, some fun icons. This is for playlist, so it might be different. But do I go with this one instead? Again, selecting it, pasting it, you get the idea, right? The big thing you need to keep in mind is like, anytime you're using from an external resource, these are out there in the wild, so there's a chance that other people might be using this exact same icon. Use them because we want to use universal icons, so I think that's good. I would never use any of these for the name, for the logo of my app, okay? Because if I do that, obviously somebody else can take it, you know, and point that out. It's like Olive Garden. Does anybody know the name of the font that's used for Olive Garden? They went through a redesign, and it's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't remember. But all they did is just took a font that a lot of designers are familiar with and just dropped it in and started using it. And it's not a custom at all. Even though it looks like a sort of a custom logo design, it's literally a font. Okay, getting off track, but we are, again, focusing on these icons. Again, library, super easy stuff to do. I hope this is okay that I'm just doing copy and paste. But again, what do we want to do? Search. I'm literally typing in the word search because Noun Project kind of knows these things. This is something super easy to make too. So if I did want to make this, and maybe we'll do library. And I could actually type in books, might be easier. Oh look, that's where this one came from, was actually Noun Project, right? But what I want to do is maybe try this one and use it. We'll get to that in a second. So anytime you're doing a copy and paste, you're actually you have access to all the Bezier, all the vector lines. They're all in here. So notice how I shrunk it down. We can see how they get thicker. But that's exactly what I want to do. As I go in here, I'm like, hey, you know what? Let's actually eliminate some of these lines. There's lots of lines in here. But let's do something different. And this is just where I would start designing this myself. What is the name of... Oh, thank you, Meredith Wins. Slow light clap since my hands are near the mic. Coquette. Coquette? Coquette is the Olive Garden font, which coquettes are actually a pastry from like the Nordics, kind of in like in Amsterdam I've had coquettes. So I don't know if coquette is Italian or not, but it'd be funny if it wasn't Italian. But they're little like puff filled pastries. They're super good. Okay, so unlock, ungroup, all that stuff. I can start kind of like making my own. Oop. Locking that down. Getting rid of some of this stuff. So much I need to do. And this is a situation. Check this out. You ready for this? I'm designing right here on this particular artboard. What I can do is I can actually take all these assets, and I got a lot going on. That background, I got to make sure that's locked down. But I'm going to move these over. See, I have this background that's not locked down. There we go. Okay, but that's what happens as you start designing. You'll notice that you're potentially grabbing other assets. So if I pull this off the pasteboard, this is a great place to work, because what does it do? It isolates it into just the overall pasteboard. It's like it's outside of the artboard, like in Illustrator, right? So that's what I'll typically do, is have things kind of outside, because it was just conflicting a little too much. Right in here, I can kind of go to town and make what I need to make. I have access to those Bezier points. I can come in and start to refine this a little more, drawing that out, turning off the fill, making that black, and rounding the corners. In this case, I just want to round this. Well, maybe I want to round them all. Maybe I do. But grabbing those control points in the corner, and I can round that just like that, okay? From there, duplicating by holding down the Option and the Shift key, and making my own library icon, as you can see. I'm gonna take this, bring it up. Thank you so much for these smart guides. And that's my icon that I now have grouped, right? So this looks much better. It's going in the style, for the style of this particular app, which is all about just keeping it simple. I love this black and white, bold look so far. This is really working out well. Let's do the search icon real fast. Boom. You get it. You get it. Let me know if you have any questions. And again, thanks for joining me. Just keep in mind, we do have a great lineup this week, starting tomorrow. Just a quick click out here. 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Jennifer, Jill, Ainsley. All about UI, UX all week long. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then even Fridays joining, Talon's joining us. But that's what's happening. And this getting started is all to prep you for this week. And we do a different subject every week. Bringing that size up. Drawing out the line. You ready for this? We're again making these high fidelity designs now. Lining that up. Changing the color. Changing the size. And again, I could use Illustrator. I could use these various other apps. Let's align this like that. But right here, this right here, I don't want this to be like flat like that. I actually want to curve it out. Right over here, you got it right there. Curve or round that cap just like that. And now I can bring this up and do something like that. All right, you get the idea. Rotate it. Boop. Done. Group. We have our icons made. We have this high fidelity. I should have been working at an actual size with this, but that looks pretty good. So it works for me. All right. Okay. Icons are done. Let's bring these in here. Pasting them in. There. Okay, so this is going to be pretty important, what I talk about next, which is all about how you save these out for reuse. Okay, let's ungroup that. All right, how is everyone doing? So I've been having a wonderful, hopefully everybody's having a great Monday. Let's undo that. Let's grab these, let's bring them up. You get the idea. You get the idea, right? Okay, so there's a couple different ways to do this because I want to get this into my assets panel, right? That's what I want to do. There's a couple different ways we could do this. We could actually take each individual icon and bring it into our assets panel as a symbol, or we could take the whole bar and bring it in, okay? So I can take this whole bar. Let's make sure everything's unlocked. Unlocked. Thank you. Assets panel, clicking on symbols, adding that, and this could be my nav bar, just like that. Now I can reuse that everywhere I want to use it, like right over here, on down the line. You ready for this? Pro tip. So as we're designing multiple screens, anytime you find yourself doing things more than once, think about how can I make this easier on myself, right? First off, I'm going to copy this. I'll select the playlist screen and then I Command V will paste it in. But what I could also do, since I need to paste this across 4 screens, I could select them all, Command V, paste them across the board. Okay? The artboard, that is. Mondays with the P train. Everybody get on the P train. Ryan Ford, it's funny that you say that because that's like a nickname that is like every group of friends that I've had have come up with the nickname P train. I think it's pretty, I don't know, it's work. Malaysia's here. Welcome, Malaysia. The whole country of Malaysia, represented by Leslie. Thanks, Leslie. So thanks for hanging out. So this is the thing, like this is all linked together. This is great because you know what I noticed? This looks a little high, right? What do? I double click inside of this. Remember, this is a symbol. So anything I change in here, it's going to change it everywhere, right? So what do I want to do? I want to select that and I want to move them all down. We can see how I can center those. So again, I encourage you when you're designing screens, work on one screen, work it. And then once you have that look defined and everything, you'll notice everything will start to fall into place really fast, okay? And that's what I'm doing right now, working on one screen at a time. And typically I'll work on the most important screens, which would be, you know, this featured screen and the player screen. Right over here, this play. This screen is gonna get the most attention. It's gonna be here. I'm gonna be looking at this more than anything, right? So how do I do this? Well, let's kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna change this up a little bit. I'm gonna select that background, go over here, grab my Drake image, drop that in right there. Okay. And as I look at this some more, I'm realizing since I have this image in here, maybe I don't need to say now playing, right? Because maybe it's not playing right now. Maybe it's on pause. Maybe they're skipping forward. This is a case where I don't think this content is even needed. I don't need to say now playing, right? I just don't, right? I'll put right in here. That's looking pretty good. Same thing for this background. I'm gonna take this to the next level. You ready for this? Let's get rid of that. Actually, let's do some magic. I'm gonna move pretty fast right here. I'll just drop that Drake image in. And I'm gonna take a cue from, I think different music players do this as well. Wait for it. And again, I have about 15 more minutes, so let's get this all done for the day. Drag that down. This is gonna be my background Drake image. And this is my foreground Drake image. Like that. Selecting this image, and let's give it a background blur. Oh, excuse me. Let's give it an object blur. Okay, click object blur. Okay, just like that. See, this is what I want. It's all about focusing on the content and not the interface, right? Anytime you do that object blur, sometimes you get the background kind of spilling over. What I chose earlier was black, so we'll kind of bring that in. And there's some other tricks around that, but you get the idea. Okay, let's just do that. Let's do that. Let's have some fun. All right. Ram Kumar is UI UX designer in Chennai. I don't know where Chennai is, but good for you. That's fantastic. Here's a couple other things I'm going to do with this. As I select it, this is a very bright album, right? And what I'd want to do here, I do have the object blur that I can control. But another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to blur this out and I'm going to drop the opacity down, okay? So let's make this background black. This is something that I want to go with, something kind of like this. I have the background blurry and then the appearance, the transparency, I'm basically mixing in some black. So what that allows me to do is to take all of these elements right in here and make them white. I think this is going to be a better look for it overall. Okay, that's what I'm going with. You get the idea. And I need to change everything. So if it's on this screen, not in the nav bar, it's going to be white. As I change it. But again, these are decisions I'm making, not based at random, but based on the content. So I got to make sure everything's looking good. That might be something else that I need to change. Let's undo that. Trying to figure out where these, oh, those are images. All right, so we'll leave those as is. And I have that going on, right? There we are, changing these really fast. And this is a case, if I'm designing for multiple screens, I want to make sure the content's appropriate, which is what I would change next. Let's go in here, grab this right here, change that to white. You get the idea. Fantastic. Okay, what else is going on in life? Good to have you here. Lead designer is with us, saying Adobe Live. Hello. Danielle, awesome. I'm going to be down in Clemson University this week in case anybody wants to join me. Be doing a little keynote down there on Friday, and Thursday we're going to be talking about Adobe XD. So that's how my week's shaping up. A lot of this content is the same, right? I'll select it all, except for this button. Boop. If I can uncheck that one. Let's get rid of this. Delete. You get the idea. Let's take all this. Copy. Go here. Paste. Done and done. Ooh, this is nice. Ooh, that's nice. This is a good question. Wow. Question is like, which one looks better? Left or right? Left or right? Okay, so this is a case. Check this out. This is what I would do. Anytime you need somebody else's feedback as you're designing these prototypes, and this is all falls in line with the Daily Creative Challenge, but I would want to potentially share this. Clicking the share button, and I'd want to share this document with someone else, right? Let's save it out. Music. I haven't even saved this, but I can share this with someone else just to preview like these two screens. Okay, so that's one thing I can do. In fact, check this out. I'm going to do this. I think this should work. You ready for this? I'm going to create a prototype, and this is going to be really simple. I'm going to link that screen to that one, and the screen back to this one. Because I'm like, hey buddy, which screen do you like better? Clicking share, share document. Hold on. Making sure that works. Cool. Sorry. I'm sharing for review, by the way, not share document. Share for review. And anyone with a link can view. You have all these properties, create link. And then you should just be able to, since I only hooked up those two screens, those are the only two you will see. If you don't hook up anything, you can go through all of the various screens just by using the arrow keys. But since I hooked up only those two screens, it should, wait for it. I gotta just verify this, you know. Yeah, there we go. Since I hooked up only these two screens, I can now display these two screens to someone else. And I'll start with this first one. I'll be like, which screen do you like? Dark or light? That's what I do. I can go ahead and ask that question right there. And at this point, I can go ahead and send this to someone else, right? So that's what I would do. And I can literally just copy and paste this link. But this is a good way to get somebody else's feedback, even a designer friend being like, hey, what do you think of this? And then once you decide, you can pick the one that's appropriate. In fact, it actually shows me right here. Boom! This is fun. This is really cool to see. I'm sorry, I kind of judge people a little bit on like their choices right here. So yeah, which one do you like? I want to know. Looks like we have right. Exactly. Michael Crabtree, you nailed it. The dark kind of feels muddy with the blurred image background. The reason that happens is because this is a bright image. If I would have picked a different image, right, it would have looked really good. I know it would have. But anytime you just like mix bright colors with black, it's just gonna look muddy. But I have to be aware of that because this Madonna album would look muddy. This Queen album would look good because it's already dark. So dark ones will work better for this dark one. But even the dark ones I think will look pretty good with this light. So let's go ahead and do that as case in point. Let's duplicate that. Let's grab an image. Let's grab a dark image. Let's drop it right in there. Grab this dark image, drop it right in there. Hopefully I got the same ones. Maybe I didn't. Yeah, I did. So that's what another album cover looks like for this Now Playing. Again, I want to focus on these because they are so important, because they're going to be the screens that we see the most. Okay, let's do the same thing for this one. Let's duplicate it. with different art. In fact, that same art, different than the first, but there's dark, there's light. Cool. Good examples. And this is what I want to do, is try to deal with real content and see what that looks like in this case. Okay, I have about 5 minutes in designing this, getting everybody's opinion, which is like really helpful. This is what I want to do. As I'm designing screens, I can't stick with, you know, the best album cover artwork. I kind of need to vary it based on the content and see how it looks. This one actually still looks pretty good. I get it, that's wrong, but I'm leaning toward the light. I'm leaning definitely toward this light. Think about it. By the time you're playing this song, you already know you have an idea of already like what's playing, right? I get it, passion fruit, right? And in fact, this is another case where I would like focus on how long this content is. Passion fruit, that's so simple. Let's do long title, and this is again dealing with real content. Let's change this up. This is for Paco. What is the? Okay. Hold on. Sorry for my loud typing. There we go. A long title. So I would just start to experiment with this. This is actually, I will give you, I don't know if anyone knew who sings this song. I believe you, but my Tommy gun don't, or doesn't. But either way, I'm testing out these long titles to make sure it fits. Because when you're designing high fidelity screens, you definitely need to take into account the content for sure. And again, this would be initial caps, but you get it. Could be anything, you know, artists. And that is by Brand New. I'd obviously change that art as well. Still works with the long titles. That's why I didn't change the size of this at all. All right. Here we go. Eric mentions needs a slightly transparent bar behind the UI buttons. Okay, let's try that. That might work out well. That's a very good point, Eric. You're spot on, because if you don't put it in kind of like a container, they seem to kind of float around. Everything is kind of floating, right? And you need an element to stabilize it, especially at the bottom. You need to stabilize those elements. So we do that right here, just drawing in a rectangle, as we can see, turning off the border, sending that back. Adjusting either the transparency, maybe changing the color. These are the decisions that I need to make as a designer. And probably this is another thing that's happening. What do we have here? We have two elements that are fighting for my attention. I have this bar and I have this bar. Do I need to go to is this a persistent nav or not? Right? So like how are these going to work out together? Like, is this making sense? So you need to be look at it in terms of hierarchy. You know, this stands out a lot more, but really at this point, I don't need this to stand out so much. So I think these bars kind of conflict where they're at, different things like that. That's something I need to work on for sure. But I'm also winding down right now. So I'm going to work on that, but that's where we are. Just so you have an idea, we designed all these screens, high fidelity prototypes. I have it saved starting from a low fidelity one. Picking colors, I'd pick the colors again based on hitting the I button for eyedropper, but I'd pick colors with a purpose. And here I stayed neutral with the colors because I want this album art to stand out, right? So that's what I do in all these cases, as you can see. But I thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to drop in some images in here. It gets to be really easy once you have the low fidelity prototypes made, dropping in that content and making sure everything stands out. And how I was typically doing that is just making sure that had a nice like object blur is where that's at. So we did pretty well within an hour. We've designed probably 8+ screens. It's well on its way within an hour. Don't have any of your clients watch this because things take a lot longer typically. Good job. Pankaj mentions a 1 pixel white border. So good. That's such a good idea. Right here. I'm going to do that really fast, and I'm going to sign off in a second as well. But just kind of switching that to a white border. How come I'm not seeing that white border? I don't know why I'm not seeing that white border, but that's a great idea. Is just add like a hairline line right here. Boom. Do that. Make sure that's white. That's a great idea. So I love it. A little bit of elegance right here as I start to work on that. It's so good. Great idea. That might be it. I even have this. Oh, that's because this is set to, maybe there's a background blur there or something. But I'm just trying to establish some hierarchy here. So that's where we're at. Thank you so much for watching. Fantastic. That song was by Brand New, just so you know. And join us here, actually, as much as you can. We really appreciate you. Anel, I appreciate you. Eric, I appreciate you. Kita as well. Rahul, Nicholas, John. Oh, so good. I love all this stuff. I love all this feedback. I want to spend more time on it. But I'll be live on Facebook later today. And don't forget about tomorrow. The schedule is what I'm going to leave you with. And not to mention, I'm giving you a head start when it comes to the Daily Creative Challenge. Designing high fidelity screens and all that goodness. All right, I guess that's it. If there's no more questions, got some thank you. I think everybody's here is super awesome and has a keen eye, and it's just helpful to have such a brain trust of designers to work with. So I appreciate you. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. On Twitter, Paul Trani, and I'll be live later today. And yeah, that is about it. So thanks so much, everyone. Again, I appreciate you, and I'll just leave you with the schedule. So thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you soon.